I want to talk about a recent paper that Andreessen Horowitz published. It's about biotech and the future of biotech. It's pretty much in line with our thesis and our investment in the Crispr index. To some extent, we actually were inspired by them before. This paper just summarizes their thinking, which in many aspects we agree with. So this is what I want to discuss today. The paper is in principle, the question is the following. You used to have biotech companies that develop assets, for example, drugs or certain technologies, and then they would sell those drugs or those technologies to other companies. And that was a pretty profitable business. For example, one of the most successful biotech companies is Genentech. They figured out how to make insulin out of basically biotech processes and therefore solve the big problem in diabetes. And the company was bought by Roche for something in the 100 billion range. So that was pretty successful. Now, what Andreessen Horowitz in particular, Vijay Pandey and Jorge Conde, those two, I think, are the main drivers of this thesis there. They talk about asset, platform, and channel. And I want to talk about this in sort of our view. I want to take their ideas and put our flavor on it because first and foremost, of course, I want to credit them for their ideas, but I also want to make sure that we have our unique approach to this and our unique investments. This is Not Even Wrong podcast. It's November 2nd, 2021. This is Crim Delco. For today, the fund is down 2.6%. The market's up 40 basis points. For the year, we are up 56.4%. The market is up 21.3%. We are outperforming by 35.1%. The market is still open. Therefore, these things could change. Just before I go into the conversation, the main driver of the performance this year has been Tesla. Our Crispr index has contributed roughly 6% to the portfolio. Bitcoin is down 1%. RTX and Intel are down together also 1%. So the biotech index has been relatively pedestrian. Certainly, given the size and everything, I would say it's been in line with the market, which of course is disappointing for a company or an index of companies that supposedly are changing the way life sciences works. This is what we're expecting, but also, of course, it sometimes just takes time for the market to understand this. So let's talk about this thesis. So what is the fundamental thesis? The fundamental thesis is that life sciences is turning from a bespoke science into an engineering science. What that means is, first and foremost, and this is very important for us, iteration, the cost of iteration is coming down, because this is really what engineering actually means. It means that you can start iterating around problems, that you don't need to hit the jackpot in the lab and those sort of things, that you can simply start with a problem and start building an innovation stack around the problem and continue and hopefully succeed in solving much bigger problems. Now, what Andreessen Horowitz is saying, and this is very much in line with our thesis, is that we have a little bit of a change in the perspective of companies, because they're not just companies that, let's say, use CRISPR to edit a certain genome and solve a certain problem. They're building a platform. And the word platform, for example, in the 10K of Intellia is 39 times, because Intellia is one of the best examples of a platform approach towards using CRISPR technology to solve certain problems. What they're doing is, first and foremost, of course, they're very good at editing the genome using the CRISPR technologies that they own, the patents that they own. They also have a certain approach towards delivery, which is lipid nanoparticles, that others are not using. And what they're saying is they're using a modular approach. So they want to build a platform where various problems can be solved at different stages of the value chain. So, for example, they have a modular approach towards delivering certain CRISPR technology to deliver. They have a modular approach towards delivery of CRISPR technology, period. They have a modular approach of delivering CRISPR technology with other means of delivery, for example, maybe with viruses. So I think this is the fundamental difference between a company like today, like Intellia, maybe before. There are many, many problems that can be solved through the iterative process that the company is engaged in. Now, what Jorge Conde is saying, and I think this is very important, and it's also actually in line with with what we spoke about yesterday when we spoke about the difference between software industry and physical industry. And the question yesterday was that the software industry has relatively low cost of iteration, but the problem is which problems to solve. It is relatively difficult to find problems to solve because your problem set is almost infinite. Now, similarly, in the biotech space, we have the problem of, okay, which problem are we even attacking? Are we attacking cancer? Are we attacking the cancer in a way that we want to cure it? Or do we just want to prevent certain inroads of cancer? So we want to just prevent the onset of it, or we want to prevent the actual thing? Or are we just focusing on delivery? Are we focusing on monogenetic diseases? Are we trying to solve multi-genetic diseases? How are we doing this? So there's a lot of different, I would say the problem set is also, it's not infinite, but it's certainly very, very large. This is a fascinating topic, I think. The problem set. What is the problem set, and which parts of the problem set are we attacking? If you think about it, a startup has to answer that question first before they even go after building an innovation stack. And what Jim McKelvey in his book, The Innovation Stack, says is that you start with a problem and then you start building solutions, and then you create new problems and you build solutions and so on and so forth. So what he's saying is that the problem of which problem to solve actually starts with a good problem, with something tangible that we can attack. But then if I'm a startup, I also want to start thinking along the lines of a platform. And what does it really mean, a platform? That just means that once I start building an innovation stack, why not try to build an innovation stack around something which is multipliable, which can be transferred to other areas, which can be maybe used in multiple instances. So let's say if I'm Intellia, which is one of our companies in the biotech space that is building a platform out of their assets. If I'm Intellia, I'm very good at genome editing. I know how to do that. I also have licenses to base editing and prime editing, so I can do multi-gene editing. But how about I try to do what they're doing, which is I try to do a modular approach where I say, look, certain aspects of problems can be solved with a single gene edit and a delivery through a lipid nanoparticle. Other problems can be solved just through the delivery. Let other people deal with the gene editing, but we solve the delivery part of things. Other problems can be solved by using other people's delivery part, let's say Regenex Bio's viruses, but we can use our particular base or prime editing to do multi-edits. So there are this is what they mean with modular approach. And I think it's a very powerful concept because it gives you flexibility. And I think these are concepts that we can't emphasize enough. Flexibility, adapting, solving problems around teams that can not just solve the problem, but also create new, better problems to solve out of the solutions that they have. For example, once Intellia solves the problem of lipid nanoparticle delivery to the liver, maybe they can also attack other diseases within the liver, which can only be attacked once you solve that first problem. So what does platform really mean in general? Let's talk about this a little bit because it's so crucial to our investments, not just on the biotech side, but also Tesla. What is a platform? A platform is a certain set of assets that allows iteration at a much bigger scale and also opens up optionality. So you don't iterate just around one problem. So for example, the people that built the Golden Gate Bridge, they didn't build a platform, they built a bridge. That's it. And every bridge, particularly in those days, was very unique. So there's not a lot of optionality here. Where is the optionality? The optionality comes from the adaptability of solutions to other problems. And like I mentioned with Intellia, this was this is what we mean when they solve the delivery problem with lipid nanoparticles. Well, that can be used for many different types of diseases, and so on and so forth. Tesla is a platform company, of course, because they have a platform of building cells. They have a platform of building batteries. They have a platform of building powertrains, cars, selling cars. All these things add up to solving a problem, which is transportation, but it's a platform to solve that problem. And I think, again, in physical space, it's probably a little bit more obvious what a platform is, versus in software space or in biotech space, it's a bit less obvious because you have so many problems you can attack. It's very similar to our episode yesterday. I guess in physical space, the problems are obvious, but the iteration is expensive. In biotech space, the problems are a little bit less obvious, and iteration now, thanks to CRISPR, is a lot cheaper. So we can now start attacking problems and maybe different problems. We can iterate around solving problems. So we can try to solve this problem. If it doesn't work, we can try to solve that problem. So this is another reason why we're so bullish on the biotech side of things because of CRISPR, because iteration enables not just a faster path towards solving a problem, but it also helps us find problems. This is very important. So in that sense, I think the biotech space is kind of between the physical space and software space, because it's kind of software, but it's also, of course, physical. It's chemical, which is, physical. There are things, there are atoms, electrons moving around, things like that. And the point that I want to make here is that with CRISPR, now we have two advantages within the biotech space. We have the ability to solve, let's say we have a certain problem. There's a monogenetic disease, and we want to solve that disease. We want to build a drug for that disease. We can solve it by iterating around editing the genome. But we can also, through iteration now, in a much less costly way, find problems to solve. So maybe the liver problem is something we want to solve. Maybe we want to solve multiple sclerosis, maybe Alzheimer. We can start going after problems. We can also find ways to maybe, like I said, should we go at the onset of a disease, or should we attack the disease when it's already in action, so sort of as a cure. All of these things can be attacked through biotech because iteration is now cheaper. So I want to actually, and this is a very nice example of how through thinking through a problem, I come up with a new solution, which is, instead of talking about platform and asset and all these things that Jorge Conde and A16Z is talking about, I want to expand further and use our thesis of physical space and software space, and now add a third space, which is biotech space, which is sort of a hybrid between physical space and software space. And the thesis is the following. In physical space, problems are easy to find but hard to solve. In software space, problems are easy to solve, but they're hard to find. And in biotech space, it's a hybrid. So problems are relatively hard to find and relatively hard to solve. And through CRISPR, we are now sort of converging physical space with software space. So CRISPR allows for cheap iteration or low-cost iteration in a space where problems are relatively easy to find compared to the software space, but much, much harder to find relative to the physical space. And through CRISPR, now we have also the ability to iterate around solving problems. So we can basically ask ourselves, which problems should we solve? And that together gives us a much, much stronger foundation for biotech and wealth creation. Now, I think the real strong argument I want to make here is that we have two technologies which are helping the physical space and the biotech space to become more iterative technology, more iterative sectors. We have AI, which is helping the physical space to iterate faster. And like we said, we have an easier way to find problems. So all we need to do is find ways to iterate, and AI can help do that. And then we have CRISPR, which is helping to iterate around finding solutions in the biotech space and also finding problems. So AI and CRISPR are crucial for the physical space and the biotech space to become more engineering practices and also become more iterative, in a sense that they can lower the cost of iteration and therefore increase the pace of disruption. On the software side, we said that finding problems is the key problem here. We can use some techniques like AI to find better problems, but I think in general, finding problems is For the whole software space, it's not such a big deal because we will always have startups that will find problems. For investors, it's a little bit more difficult to isolate the kinds of startups that have good problems to solve. We are more, that's why we at Orange Capital Partners tend to be more in the physical and biotech space, because we feel finding the right problem is relatively hard in the software space. So we'd rather be in the physical space where we know what the problem is, and we can use artificial intelligence amongst other technologies to increase the rate of iteration. And within the biotech space, we can use CRISPR and artificial intelligence to also increase the rate of iteration and also enable faster solution towards problems and faster finding of problems, which is, like we said, one of the issues within the biotech space. Thank you.